All right, settle down, settle down. We've got quite a source today. It's this critique of Lizianity
Hmm.
by someone calling themselves Speck Supreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it kicks off pretty dramatically. It says this whole Lizianity thing is a, quote, weaponized parasocial aesthetic cult.
Weaponized.
Yeah.
That's quite the opening salvo, isn't it?
It really is,
Yeah.
right out of the gate.
Yeah, it immediately frames it not as some organic internet thing, but as something calculated, almost like a strategy.
Exactly. The author seems to be dismissing any idea of it being a genuine belief system from the very beginning.
They present it as deliberate, potentially quite damaging in how it works underneath, not just analyzing quirks, but something more intentional.
Okay, so for anyone just joining us, what is this Lizianity we're diving into? It's it describes itself as a few things, doesn't it?
The lines seem blurry. Is it a religion, a spiritual movement, or maybe just a very intense lifestyle brand?
Right, and it's apparently centered around things like indulgence, transformation,
Yeah.
and divine chaos.
Divine chaos, yes.
Yeah. So our mission today, using this, Speck's critique, is to unpack the core ideas of Lizianity as they see them. Understand the argument here.
And it's an analytical document specifically looking at the language, the official lexicon, and the core concepts.
Yeah, the author isn't really engaging with, like, follower experiences or personal stories.
No, it's a very specific approach. It's about examining the language, the symbols, through a, let's say, highly critical lens to build a case about motivations and effects.
Now, Lizianity itself,
Hmm.
it's definitely unconventional. It's not your standard philosophy class.
Are from it.
But that's why we're looking at it, right? To understand these maybe stranger phenomena, see what's going on beneath the surface, helps us get a handle on broader online culture shifts.
Exactly. Whether you agree with the source's conclusions or not, analyzing how they critique it, that offers insight into persuasion, branding, community building online today.
Okay, so first target for Speck, the names.
Yeah.
Lizianity, the Queendom, even things like Hadbuxism and Lislam. The argument is these aren't organic, not spontaneous. They're strategic branding tools. Designed, apparently, to make Liz seem like a digital deity.
Yeah, the source posits that this wasn't accidental naming. It was conscious crafting, building a specific brand, a hierarchy.
So Hadbuxism isn't just a joke about coffee.
Not according to this critique. It's framed as capitalism, sort of repackaged with glamour. And Lislam, similarly, is seen less as irony and more as potentially problematic appropriation hidden by humor.
Right, appropriation. And even the cult of Liz Speck says that's the most accurate name, but even that got absorbed into the branding.
It suggests a real calculation behind how the movement even talks about itself.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about online communities. How much is real connection? How much is branding? So for you listening, have you seen this kind of strategic naming elsewhere online? Is it always manipulation, or could it just be how online slang evolves sometimes?
It definitely highlights how powerful language and labels are. The critique argues these aren't just descriptions, they're prescriptions, molding how followers see the leader and themselves.
Okay, next up, the follower labels. We've got mice, morsels, and specks.
They do sound rather...
They're small, diminutive, yeah. Speck Supreme calls it psychological warfare. Says this making people seem childlike, this infantilization, even if it looks like community, is really engineered subjugation.
Well,
strong stuff.
very strong. The interpretation is that these terms, even if seemingly harmless, are used deliberately to chip away at individual agency, to set up a clear power dynamic.
How so?
Well, if you're constantly referred to by a name suggesting smallness or vulnerability, the critique suggests you become more dependent, less likely to think independently or question authority. You're subtly positioned as less important.
That idea of an intentional power imbalance, that's what jumps out. These aren't just cute nicknames in this view, they're tools. Makes you think about labels in any group, really. Can terms that seem harmless actually have a deeper psychological impact than we realize?
It taps into group psychology, definitely. How language shapes our self-identity and our relationship to leadership. The critique raises big questions there.
Then there are the titles for the person at the center. Speck called them titles of a tyrant. Things like apex predator, the controller, the heartbreaker.
Yeah, not exactly your standard job titles.
Yes, no.
Yeah, right.
Unless you're going for a very specific vibe. The critique sees these as deeply narcissistic, signs of wanting dominance, and even public humiliation. That's intense.
The author reads them not as playful or ironic, but as direct statements of a desire for power. Apex predator puts everyone else below you, right? The controller implies wanting to manipulate thoughts, actions.
And the public humiliation part.
It paints a pretty dark picture, suggesting maybe the leader's self-worth is tied to others being subservient.
Right. So it's not just an online character. It's seen as reflecting a real drive for control, maybe something darker.
Yeah.
So what kind of message do titles like these send out online? How does that fit with leadership today? Is it just role play gone wild, or is there something more going on?
It really makes you consider the line between online persona and, actual personality traits. The critique argues these titles aren't just for show. They signal a deeper desire for dominance within this specific online group.
Okay, now the symbolism. This gets pretty detailed. Eyes mean surveillance. Lip gloss means seduction used as power. Claws mean hidden violence.
Mm-hmm. Even the coffee cup.
Yeah, the headbugs cup. It's supposedly a metaphor for addiction. Speck argues this isn't just random style. It's got a deeper, maybe more sinister meaning.
It's quite something how the author breaks down these everyday visuals. They're not seen as just aesthetic choices, but as parts of a system designed to influence. Eyes watching you, lip gloss manipulating through attraction, claws hinting at harm.
And the cup representing addiction to consumerism.
Exactly. It stops being just a cup and becomes a symbol of dependency, tying into what the critique sees as a core part of Lizianity consumerism itself.
So the takeaway is, it's not just quirky internet stuff. It's calculated marketing psychology disguised as mythology. That's a heavy assessment.
It is.
It really makes you look twice at online imagery, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How often do we actually analyze the messages hidden in symbols? What power do they really hold over us?
It just underlines how potent visual language is. Symbols carry meaning, intended or not. The critique insists that here, the symbolism is very much intended, serving a purpose to reinforce the movement's ideas and keep its hold.
And speaking of aesthetics, forget minimalism. Forget beige. Apparently, blasphemy against beige is a thing here.
A rejection of simplicity.
Yeah, the dislike for minimalism, simplicity, even emotional authenticity.
Yeah.
And the reason given, it supposedly reveals a deeper fear. Stillness.
Stillness?
Yeah. Simplicity, the critique claims, threatens the whole Lizian apparatus. It could disrupt the performative chaos it needs to survive.
So the interpretation is that the aesthetic isn't just taste, it's strategic. It rejects anything that might lead to quiet thought, introspection, looking inward. Maximalism and chaos keep you focused outward, engaged constantly.
Preventing questioning, maybe?
That's the idea. And dismissing emotional authenticity fits too. It prioritizes the outward show, the performance, over real feelings.
So any quiet moment can make the whole thing fall apart. It's interesting. What role does aesthetics play in these online groups? Why push some styles and discourage others? What does he say about the identities being built?
Well, aesthetics are huge for group identity, right? Signaling you belong, setting boundaries. The critique says here the aesthetic isn't just an identity marker, it's a tool for control, reinforcing the movement's values.
Okay, even the content itself, lyrics, podcasts, memes, gets the critical treatment from Speck. It's called narcissistic content. Basically, content marketing masquerading as religion. Worship equals engagement. Spirituality is just likes and views. Sounds pretty cynical.
It's a stark comparison, isn't it? Equating religious devotion with online metrics. The critique argues the content isn't really about spiritual guidance. It's about driving engagement, growing the brand, making the central figure stronger.
Worship as engagement. That's pointed.
It implies followers are valued mostly for their clicks and data, not for any deep connection to the ideas.
It really shows how blurred the lines are now, online. Genuine expression versus crafted personas. How has the idea of sacred texts even changed? What happens when online content, with all its potential for spin, gets treated like scripture?
It raises serious questions about authority online. When online figures and viral stuff replace traditional sources, how do you tell real insight from a marketing campaign designed to build loyalty?
And then there's something called the Lady's Prayer.
Ah, yes.
It apparently uses the structure of a traditional prayer, but fills it with, well, glorifying caffeine addiction, social media obsession, looking fabulous all the time.
The critique sees it as twisting spiritual practice, replacing reverence with focus on superficial consumer stuff.
So it mimics prayer, but changes the message completely.
Exactly. The argument is it normalizes a worldview based on looks and loyalty to the leader. It kind of co-opts the feeling of religious practice for, brand building goals.
So not just online humor, it's seen as a tactic to what? Undermine traditional values, makes superficiality seem important. It makes you think about satire, how it can be used, maybe even weaponized, to shift beliefs. Where's the line between parody and something that actually corrodes values?
It's complex. Parody can be powerful critique, but the author argues here it creates a warped value system. Superficiality is good, traditional faith is subtly mocked, and it all reinforces allegiance to the leader.
Okay, now we get to what Speck sees as the real core. The pillars of control. 7 of them.
All right, the framework.
Pillar 1, parasociality, rational detachment, that's heresy.
2.
2, indulgence.
Yeah.
Non-stop consumerism is basically holy. 3, dominance. Equality is out. Know your place.
Hierarchy is key.
4, worship, which is just vanity disguised as spirituality. 5, consumption. Addiction is sacred. 6, performativity. Authenticity is weak. Performance is strong.
Put it on the show.
And 7, chaos. Morality doesn't matter if you look fabulous. That's quite a list.
This is where the critique really tries to pull it all together into a model of how control supposedly works. Each pillar is a mechanism. Parasocial bonds stop critical thinking, consumerism drives brand engagement, dominance and performance enforce the hierarchy and obedience.
And for each one, Speck explains the reasoning, the potential impact on followers. It paints a pretty bleak picture, honestly. A system designed to control people through their desires, maybe their insecurities, their need to belong.
Precisely. The argument is they all work together, creating this closed system where questioning the leader or the ideas is discouraged, but following the rules, the aesthetic, the spending is praised, even called virtuous.
And the absolute core doctrine, obey without belief. The quote is chilling. Lizianity isn't belief, it's behavior.
Yeah.
Speck interprets that as stop thinking, start clicking, consume without question, submit. Doesn't exactly sound like intellectual freedom.
The author sees this focus on action over belief as classic manipulation. Prioritize what people do, clicking, buying, looking the part over genuine understanding. That way, the critique argues, you get followers who act the way you want without necessarily even buying into the beliefs fully. Very effective online, where actions are trackable.
What are the risks there? Just acting without understanding seems like it bypasses critical thinking completely. Leaves people open to, well, whatever the agenda is.
Absolutely. When behavior trumps thought, people might not question motivations or consequences. It can create dependence on the leader for guidance, erode individual autonomy, critical thinking.
Even the music gets this treatment. The Pink album. Not just songs, but a brainwashing playlist. Engineered, Speck says, to trigger specific feelings, obsession, envy, desire, performative rebellion.
Songs as scripture, essentially, for emotional manipulation through sound.
Yeah, the critique suggests the music isn't just for fun. It's a tool for emotional influence, evoking certain feelings, themes, again and again to reinforce the Lizianity ideas, create a shared emotional bond, strengthen the connection to the leader.
Brainwashing playlist is provocative, for sure. It shows the author thinks the music's function is manipulative, not just aesthetic.
How much can music sway us, though? It's powerful, no doubt.
Yeah.
But brainwashing? What responsibility do creators have when their work can impact people so deeply?
It brings up big ethical questions about media's power. Music always connects people emotionally, but the critique is saying this use is more calculated, designed to shape attitudes within this specific movement.
And the origin story. The Big Bang moan. Speck sees textbook egomania, not empowerment. The universe starting from sound she made.
Not a metaphor, according to the critique, but delusion with a side of audio filters. Pretty harsh.
It's interpreted not as symbolic, but as extreme narcissism.
Oh.
The idea that the universe came from her expression. It reinforces this sense of absolute self-importance, putting her at the very center, a self-made divine origin story.
Which elevates her status and authority even more in this view.
So these myths, these origin stories, however weird they sound, they do shape how people see the movement and the leader, right? Even the unconventional ones. What does it say about the values here if the creation stories is seen as pure ego?
Origin stories are crucial for any group's identity. The critique argues this one reflects and reinforces the narcissism the author sees at the heart of Lizianity.
Okay, finally, the 7 sacred sins. Vanity, excess, dominance, manipulation, blasphemy, performance, obsession. Speck calls them weaponized disorders rebranded as values. Red flags dipped in lip gloss.
The observation is that these things, usually seen as bad, are deliberately reframed as good, even aspirational within Lizianity. Glorifying vanity, excess, dominance. The critique says it normalizes potentially harmful or exploitative behavior.
Weaponized disorders, that's strong, implying they're used strategically to influence followers.
Yeah, it's like flipping morality upside down. How can negative traits be repackaged as virtues so effectively? It really speaks to the power of language, of framing. A potent tactic, if that's what's happening.
It really highlights how framing works, redefining concepts. If you relabel bad things as good within your group's rules, you create this sort of alternate value system. It reinforces loyalty and discourages thinking based on, standard ethics. And the flip side, the unforgivable virtues: moderation, humility, simplicity.
The things that are usually considered good.
Exactly. But here they're seen as threats. Why? Because they encourage self-respect, independence. If you value yourself without needing all the Liz stuff, the whole thing might fall apart.
The argument is these virtues promote self-sufficiency, critical thought things that undermine the control mechanisms identified earlier. Moderation clashes with consumption, humility challenges dominance, simplicity fights the maximalist performance.
So by making these good traits seem bad,
the movement discourages followers from developing a sense of self independent of its influence and validation, according to the critique.
So the bottom line, according to Speck Supreme, is Lizianity isn't about empowerment. It's about conforming aesthetically, giving up your identity for online approval. The call to action is, you don't need Liz to see you. You need to see through her. Resist the aesthetic. Reclaim yourself. Pretty direct ending.
Yeah, the core argument is that it's presented as this carefully built system of control, using looks, using parasocial bonds to potentially exploit followers. Not a real spiritual path, but a sophisticated brand strategy focused on engagement and spending over individual thought.
Wow. Powerful ideas. Unsettling, really. It leaves you thinking. In this world full of curated online lives and the constant fight for attention, how do we even start to critically look at the messages we get hit with every day? How do we protect our own sense of who we are when so many things are subtly trying to shape us? What are those quiet ways that trends or online figures might be influencing us without us even realizing it? Definitely something to mull over, something to really consider in your own online life.